Before we begin, I need you to understand something. What you're about to hear isn't just another true crime story. This is a case where a man turned murder into a science, where a planning document became a blueprint for serial killing, where the hunter became the hunted through his own obsessive need for perfection. If you've ever wondered how serial killers actually think, not the Hollywood version, but the chilling reality, you're in the right place. Because buried in a hard drive in Long Island was a file titled HK 200204. And inside that file was something investigators had never seen before, a step-by-step guide to getting away with murder. By the end of this investigation, you'll understand three things. First, how a single pizza box brought down a killer who'd evaded justice for 3 decades. Second, why the most dangerous predators aren't the ones who act on impulse. They're the ones who plan. And third, how technology that didn't even exist when these crimes began would ultimately solve them. Now, let's begin where every nightmare does, with a phone call in the dark. Picture this: Long Island's barrier beaches stretching into the Atlantic like skeletal fingers. Oak Beach, Gilgo Beach, places where the wealthy escape, where summer homes dot the coastline, where the sand is white and the secrets are buried deep. It's 4:51 in the morning. Most of America is still asleep, but in a small beach community, a woman is running for her life. Shannan calls 911. 911 dispatcher responds. 911, what's your emergency? There's somebody after me. There's somebody after me. Her voice wavers between terror and disorientation. This call will last 22 minutes. 22 minutes of pure terror. 22 minutes that will haunt everyone who hears it. And ultimately, 22 minutes that will crack open one of the most disturbing serial killer cases in American history. But here's what makes this even more chilling. Shannan Gilbert's death may not even be connected to the killer we're about to discuss. Her desperate run through the darkness, it led police to discover someone else's hunting ground entirely. 911, dispatcher calls out again. Ma'am, where are you? Can you tell me your location? Shannan appears to be gasping when she says, I don't know this place where I am. I'm inside the house. No, I can't. Her name was Shannan Gilbert, 24 years old. A woman trying to survive in a world that offers few second chances and even less mercy. And here's a critical lesson in criminal psychology. The victims of serial killers are almost never random. Predators don't hunt where they might be caught. They hunt where society has already created invisible populations. People whose disappearances won't trigger immediate manhunts. People whose lives exist in the margins. Shannan advertised on Craigslist as an escort. In the eyes of law enforcement in 2010, that made her less of a priority, less credible, less worthy of urgent investigation. This is victim selection 101, and it's exactly what allowed someone to hunt for decades without consequence. The 911 call continues, then goes silent. For 22 minutes she stayed on that line, terrified, running, disoriented. And then she was gone. But her disappearance would set something in motion, a search that would uncover horrors beyond anyone's imagination. 7 months pass. December 11, 2010. Cold, gray, the kind of winter day where the wind cuts through your jacket and the beach feels like the edge of the world. Officer John Malia is out with his K9 partner, Blue, a German Shepherd trained for search and rescue. They're looking for Shannan Gilbert. Routine work, going through the motions. Blue stops. Dog barking, insistent, urgent, won't stop. Officer Malia noticed Blue kept going back to the same spot, wouldn't leave it. And when a trained dog does that, you know something's there. What they found was wrapped in burlap, small, the unmistakable shape and size of a human body. But it wasn't Shannan Gilbert. And within 72 hours, they'd find 3 more bodies, all wrapped in burlap, all posed in the same way, all within a quarter-mile of each other. This is when investigators realized something that would send shockwaves through law enforcement. They weren't dealing with a single murder. They were dealing with a serial killer who'd been operating undetected for years. 4 women, all in their 20s, all with similar backgrounds, all missing under eerily similar circumstances. They would come to be known as the Gilgo Four. Like ghosts summoned from the beach itself, their identities emerged one by one. Maureen Brainard-Barnes, 25, a mother of 2 from Connecticut. She'd vanished into thin air on July 9, 2007, 3.5 years earlier. Melissa Barthelemy, 24, from the Bronx, last seen July 12, 2009. Megan Waterman, 22, from Maine, disappeared June 6, 2010, just 5 months ago. Amber Lynn Costello, 27, from West Babylon, Long Island, vanished September 2, 2010, only 3 months before her body was found. 4 women who advertised on Craigslist. 4 women who worked as escorts to survive. 4 women who, on the night they vanished, told someone they were meeting a client. 4 women who never came home. And here's where we see the signature of an organized serial killer. Not the frenzied, impulsive violence of a disorganized offender. No, this was methodical, calculated. Someone who selected victims with precision, who disposed of bodies with care, who wrapped them in identical material like packages being shipped. Burlap, why burlap? Because it's cheap, available everywhere, doesn't attract attention when purchased, degrades naturally, destroying evidence. The choice itself tells us about the killer's mindset, practical, planning ahead, minimizing risk. This wasn't passion, this was process. Suffolk County Police Commissioner Richard Dormer told the press, "We believe we're dealing with a serial killer. The public should know that." Those words, serial killer, changed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just 4 tragic deaths. This was an active threat, a predator who could still be hunting. The search expanded. Cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, forensic anthropologists. Every inch of Ocean Parkway scrutinized like a crime scene because it was. March 2011, April 2011, more remains, more victims, more families shattered. The beach was giving up its dead like the ocean, surrendering shipwrecked victims to the shore. Each discovery more disturbing than the last. Jessica Taylor, 20 years old. But here's where it gets truly haunting. Jessica had been found before. In 2003, 8 years earlier, hunters discovered partial remains in Manorville, a town inland from the beaches. Torso, decapitated, hands removed. Her distinctive tattoo deliberately mutilated to prevent identification. For 8 years she remained nameless, Jane Doe. Then in 2011, more of her remains appeared near Gilgo Beach. The killer had split her body between 2 locations. Why? To make identification harder, to spread the risk, to demonstrate control. Valerie Mack, 24, same pattern, first discovered in Manorville in 2000, 11 years ago, just a torso. For 2 decades she would be known only as Jane Doe 6. Then in 2011 her skull surfaced near Ocean Parkway. Do you see the pattern forming? This is called a dump site evolution. Many serial killers start with one location, then change as they grow more confident or more paranoid. The Manorville site was inland, isolated, used in the early 2000s. The Gilgo Beach site was later, but more accessible for disposal. Why the change? Perhaps the killer felt Manorville was becoming too risky. Perhaps he lived or worked closer to Gilgo Beach. Perhaps he was evolving, adapting his methods. Every choice a serial killer makes tells a story. And this killer's story was written across 2 decades and multiple crime scenes. Sandra Costello, 28, from Trinidad and Tobago, found in 1993 in North Sea, Long Island, 18 years before the Gilgo Four were discovered. For nearly 3 decades her murder went unsolved. filed away, forgotten. Until investigators began connecting the dots. And there were others, shadows in the data. A toddler found alongside one of the women, an Asian male dressed in women's clothing. Karen Vergata, whose remains were found in 1996 but not identified until 2022, 26 years later. By May 2011, the count stood at 10 sets of remains. 10 lives ended, 10 families trapped in an endless nightmare of not knowing. If you're finding this investigation as compelling and disturbing as I am, do me a favor. Leave a comment right now telling me what you think so far. Do you believe one person is responsible for all these deaths? Or are we looking at multiple killers using the same dumping ground? Your engagement helps this video reach more people who care about justice for these victims. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We're about to reveal how a single piece of discarded pizza would eventually connect all of these dots. And in December 2011, 18 months after she made that terrified 911 call, they found Shannan Gilbert's skeletal remains in a marsh near Oak Beach. The official determination: not murdered, accidental drowning. She'd run into the marsh, disoriented, possibly under the influence of drugs, and succumbed to the elements. Her family never believed it. This incident caused her mother, Maureen Gilbert, to become deeply heartbroken with rage and grief. In her words, "My daughter was running for her life. She knew somebody was trying to kill her, and I will never stop fighting for the truth about what happened to her." Maureen Gilbert would spend the rest of her life fighting for justice for Shannan. Tragically, she was murdered in 2016 by one of her other daughters, who was experiencing a mental health crisis. Even in death, Shannan's story is wrapped in tragedy. But here's the thing: whether Shannan was murdered or died accidentally, her disappearance led to the discovery of the Gilgo Four. Without her desperate run through Oak Beach that night, without that 911 call, without Officer Malia and his dog Blue searching for her 7 months later, the bodies might still be there, the killer might still be hunting. Sometimes the smallest thread unravels the entire tapestry. For 11 years, the case went cold. Not from lack of trying. Investigators worked the angles, examined suspects, followed leads that went nowhere. But the killer, whoever he was, had been careful, meticulous. He'd left almost nothing behind. This is the hallmark of what FBI profilers call a high-functioning serial killer. Someone with above-average intelligence. Someone who understands forensics. Someone who learns from mistakes and adapts. These aren't the killers who get caught quickly through obvious errors. These are the ones who evade justice for years, sometimes decades. Dennis Rader, BTK, killed for 17 years before his ego got him caught. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, murdered for 19 years before DNA technology advanced enough to identify him. The question wasn't whether the Gilgo Beach killer would make a mistake. The question was whether investigators would recognize it when he did. Theories multiplied like weeds. Some believed it was a cop, someone who understood police procedure intimately. Others suspected a local politician or businessman, someone with resources and connections. Conspiracy theories flourished. The case became a wound that wouldn't heal for the families, for law enforcement, for Long Island itself. Time is supposed to heal all wounds, but for these families, time was a blade that cut deeper with each passing year. Maureen's sister, Missy Can, marked every birthday Maureen would never celebrate, every Mother's Day her niece and nephew spent without their mom. Melissa's teenage sister had received taunting phone calls from the killer himself in the days after Melissa vanished. He'd used Melissa's own phone, called from Times Square, surrounded by thousands of people, invisible in the crowd. "Do you know what I did to your sister?" he'd asked. Those words haunted her for over a decade. But in January 2022, something changed. And what happened next would demonstrate why you should never give up on cold cases, because technology doesn't stand still, and neither do determined investigators. January 2022. Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison made a decision that would change everything. Form a new task force. Investigators from Suffolk County Police, New York State Police, the FBI, and the District Attorney's Office. Fresh eyes, new technology, old evidence re-examined with modern tools. We went back to the beginning. Every piece of evidence, every phone record, every witness statement from 2010, 2007, even the 1990s. We treated it like it was day one. 6 weeks later, March 14, 2022, a New York State investigator was reviewing databases, cross-referencing thousands of records, looking for a very specific vehicle. Here's a crucial lesson in criminal investigation. Witness descriptions, even from brief encounters, can be remarkably accurate. Multiple witnesses had described seeing some of the victims with a client who drove a distinctive vehicle, a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche, green, with a unique feature, an unusual design between the cab and the bed. This wasn't a common vehicle. The first-generation Avalanche was only produced from 2001 to 2006. Even fewer were green. In the entire New York area, the list of registered owners was surprisingly small. One name appeared, Rex Heuermann. And when investigators pulled his DMV photo, they saw a face that matched witness descriptions from over a decade earlier. 6'4", hulking build, distinctive oversized glasses from the 1970s, an appearance witnesses had described as ogre-like. Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight. For 11 years, Rex Heuermann had been living his life, commuting to work, walking the streets of Manhattan, shopping at Home Depot, a monster wearing a human mask so ordinary that no one looked twice. To understand Rex Heuermann, you have to understand the duality, the split, the two men living in one body. This is classic compartmentalization, a defense mechanism many serial killers use to separate their normal life from their violent one. Dennis Rader was a church president and Cub Scout leader. John Wayne Gacy performed as a clown at children's parties. Ted Bundy worked at a suicide crisis hotline. They don't see themselves as monsters. They see themselves as ordinary people who occasionally do extraordinary things. The cognitive dissonance doesn't destroy them, it fuels them. By day, Rex Heuermann was an architect, 60 years old in 2022, ran a small consulting firm near the Empire State Building. His clients included Catholic charities, American Airlines, respectable organizations. He lived in Massapequa Park with his wife, Asa, and their 2 children, a daughter and a stepson. The house was deteriorating, cluttered, in visible disrepair, but it was his house, his family, his life. In a neighbor's account about him, she recounts that he was strange, really strange, kept to himself. The house, God, that house looked like it was falling apart, junk everywhere, but you don't think someone like that is capable of that. You think they're just weird. Weird doesn't mean dangerous. Eccentric doesn't mean evil. But sometimes, in rare, terrifying cases, the weird exterior is camouflage for something monstrous underneath. But investigators discovered something else about Rex Heuermann, something that revealed the second life. He was a digital ghost hunter, a man who existed in the shadows of the internet, and what he searched for would chill investigators to their core. The breakthrough didn't come from traditional detective work alone. It came from technology that barely existed when these murders began. Cell tower data, burner phone tracking, digital forensics. And what investigators found in Heuermann's digital life would become the foundation for one of the most comprehensive serial killer prosecutions in modern history. Because Rex Heuermann made one critical mistake. He believed he was smarter than the technology tracking him. He wasn't. In the early 2000s, before smartphones dominated, burner phones offered anonymity. Prepaid, disposable, no contract, no name attached, or so killers believed. But every phone, burner or not, pings cell towers, and those pings create a map, a pattern, a digital fingerprint. Investigators obtained cell tower data from the nights the Gilgo Four disappeared. Thousands of phones, thousands of potential suspects. Then they filtered. Phones that pinged near the victim's last known locations. Phones that also pinged in two very specific areas, Midtown Manhattan and Massapequa Park. Two locations, one pattern. Rex Heuermann lived in Massapequa Park. Rex Heuermann worked in Midtown Manhattan. But circumstantial evidence doesn't convict. They needed more. Before we go further, I need to ask you something. If you're finding value in this deep dive, if you appreciate the level of research and psychological analysis we're bringing to this case, please hit that like button. It tells YouTube to recommend this video to others who want more than surface-level true crime coverage. And if you believe stories like this need to be told with respect for the victims and attention to the investigative process, subscribe and turn on notifications. We're covering cases most channels won't touch with this level of detail. Now, let's talk about what they found in his digital history, because this is where the case transforms from circumstantial to overwhelming. The district attorney Tierney revealed that we found burner phones, burner email accounts, fake identities, Google accounts created solely for disturbing searches. What did Rex Heuermann search for? Serial killers often develop paraphilias, sexual interests in violent, sadistic, or non-consensual acts. These don't emerge overnight. They develop over years, often decades. And in the internet age, these compulsions leave digital footprints. Heuermann's searches revealed a mind obsessed with violence, control, and death. Sadistic torture pornography, extreme content depicting violence against women, images and videos that would make seasoned homicide detectives pause. But it wasn't just pornography. He searched for images of the Gilgo victims themselves, photos of their families. He studied them like a predator studies prey. And then, most chilling of all, he searched for himself. Over 200 searches about the Gilgo Beach investigation, podcasts, documentaries, news articles. He was watching the hunt unfold, invisible in the crowd of true crime enthusiasts, secretly knowing he was the monster they were seeking. Between March 2022 and June 2023, after the task force formed, after his name emerged, his searches intensified. He was looking for clues about the investigation. What did police know? What technology were they using? One search was particularly revealing. A 2021 Fox News article titled, "In Long Island Serial Killer Investigation, New Phone Technology May Be Key to Break-in Case." He knew they were getting closer, and that knowledge should have made him stop searching, stop obsessing, disappear into obscurity. But he couldn't, because serial killers have a fatal flaw. Their ego won't let them walk away. January 26, 2023, 5th Avenue, Manhattan, lunch hour. Rex Heuermann exits his office building, walking with that same hulking gait neighbors described. In his hand, a pizza box from a nearby restaurant. He walks, he eats, he finishes. And then, casually, without a second thought, he crumples the box and tosses it into a public trash can. Surveillance officers were watching. They'd been watching for weeks. They retrieved the box, sent it to the Suffolk County Crime Laboratory. This is called abandoned DNA collection, obtaining genetic material from items a suspect discards in public. It's completely legal, no warrant required, because once you throw something away, you've abandoned any expectation of privacy. Many serial killers have been caught this way. The BTK killer was identified through a floppy disk he sent to police. The Golden State Killer through familial DNA from a genealogy website. Technology evolves. Killers get caught. April 28, 2023. The DNA from the pizza crust was compared to a male hair found on victim Megan Waterman's body, preserved since 2010 in an evidence locker. It was a 99.96% mitochondrial DNA match. In forensic terms, that's as close to certainty as science allows. For 12 years, that single hair waited, patient, silent, a time bomb ticking in an evidence bag, and when the moment came, it detonated Rex Heuermann's entire world. They had him, but investigators wanted more. They wanted to be thorough, so they continued digging. And what they found in Heuermann's basement would become the most disturbing piece of evidence in the entire case. What I'm about to describe is something investigators had never encountered before, not in decades of homicide work, not in hundreds of serial killer cases. A document so methodical, so detailed, so coldly pragmatic that it reads like an instruction manual for murder. When investigators raided Rex Heuermann's home on July 13, 2023, they seized a staggering amount of electronic evidence. 350 plus devices, 27 computers, 58 internal hard drives, 22 external drives, hundreds of CDs, VHS tapes going back decades. Digital forensic analysts began the painstaking work of examining every file, every folder, every fragment of deleted data. And buried in the unallocated space of one hard drive, the digital graveyard where deleted files go, they found it. Unallocated space is where deleted files remain until they're overwritten by new data. Most people don't know their deleted files are still recoverable, but forensic software can retrieve them, sometimes years or decades later. This is why so many criminals get caught despite thinking they've erased incriminating evidence. Digital data is like ink in water. You can try to disperse it, but traces always remain. The file was titled HK200204. Created in the year 2000, modified repeatedly over the years 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004. He kept updating it, refining it, learning from experience. The district attorney Tierney in an interview describes his shock about the document. "I've been a prosecutor for decades. I've seen crime scene photos that haunt me. I've heard confessions that turn my stomach, but I have never, in my entire career, seen anything like this document. It's a blueprint, a systematic, organized guide for committing serial murder and evading detection. If evil had a filing system, this would be it." The document was structured in 4 columns: problems, supplies, dump sites, TRG. Let's break down what each one means. Problems. Under problems, Heuermann listed every obstacle he needed to overcome, every way he could be caught, every mistake he needed to avoid. DNA, hair, fibers, fingerprints. Witnesses, security cameras, traffic cameras. Tire tracks, shoe prints, blood stains. Being pulled over by police while transporting a body. Victim resistance, noise, screaming. This reveals something critical. Rex Heuermann understood forensic science. He knew how investigations worked. He studied cases where killers got caught and learned from their mistakes. This is what separates organized serial killers from disorganized ones. The disorganized killer acts on impulse, leaves chaos behind. The organized killer plans, adapts, evolves. Dennis Rader studied police procedure so thoroughly he communicated with investigators for years without getting caught. Ted Bundy worked in crime prevention, learning exactly how police thought. Knowledge is power, and for serial killers, knowledge is how they hunt for years without consequence. Supplies. Under supplies, Heuermann cataloged everything he needed, a shopping list for murder. Tarps, plastic sheeting, heavy-duty tarps he specified. Rope, but here's where it gets specific. Heavy rope, light rope broke under stress of being tightened. Let that sink in. He'd learned from experience. He'd used rope that failed, so he upgraded. Like a carpenter learning which tools work best, he refined his murder kit through trial and error. Cat litter, why? To absorb fluid, to manage decomposition odors. Booties, hair nets. Gloves, multiple types for different purposes. Cleaning supplies, bleach, industrial strength solvents. A police scanner, to monitor law enforcement frequencies. Materials for passing lie detector tests. He was preparing for the possibility of being questioned. Saws, he listed specific types for dismemberment. I know this is disturbing. I know it's hard to hear, but this is why understanding criminal psychology matters. This is why we study these cases, not to glorify evil, but to understand how it operates, how it's caught, how we prevent it. If you're still with me, drop a comment letting me know. Your engagement helps other people find this investigation. And if this level of analysis is what you want from true crime content, subscribe, because we're not done yet. Next, dump sites. Mill Road, Manorville. Ocean Parkway, Gilgo Beach. The exact locations where victims would later be discovered. He'd been planning these dump sites since 2000, 23 years before his arrest. Dump site selection is crucial for serial killers. They need locations that are isolated enough to avoid witnesses, accessible enough to reach without suspicion, familiar enough that they won't get lost or trapped, stable enough to return to if needed. Many serial killers return to dump sites, sometimes to check on decomposition, sometimes to relive the experience, sometimes to move remains if they fear discovery. The fact that Heuermann used two primary sites, Manorville and Gilgo Beach, tells us he had intimate knowledge of Long Island geography. He knew these areas well enough to feel confident. Lastly, targets. His victims. He didn't list names, that would be too obvious, but the column existed, a placeholder for human lives he intended to end. To him, they weren't people. They were problems to be solved, projects to be managed, entries in a database. But it was the additional sections that revealed the true depth of his planning. Under post-event, Heuermann outlined body disposal procedures with the precision of a technical manual. Wash body inside in all cavities. Think about that, not just external cleaning, internal. He was eliminating DNA evidence from every possible source. Remove head and hands. Standard serial killer practice. No teeth for dental identification. No fingerprints. Remove ID marks, tattoos. Jessica Taylor's tattoo was mutilated. Valerie Mack's distinctive features destroyed. This wasn't random violence. This was systematic identity erasure. Dispose of tools and devices separately. Never keep the murder weapons. Never create a connection between the crime and your home. Anything that touched the victim must be destroyed or disposed of. Complete evidence elimination. And here's what makes this even more chilling. Under a section titled Things to Remember, he wrote lessons he'd learned from previous kills. Get sleep before hunt. Too tired creates problems. He called it the hunt, not meeting someone, not even the act, the hunt. More sleep and noise control equals more playtime. Playtime, that's what he called the murders, play. This language reveals the sadistic component of his psychology. He wasn't just killing to kill. He was deriving pleasure from the process, the control, the terror, the power. Playtime suggests extended periods with victims, torture, prolonged suffering. This aligns with his searches for sadistic torture pornography. He wasn't looking for a quick kill. He was looking for an experience. And then, the most chilling line in the entire document. The more you do, the more clues you give. Investigators trace that phrase. It comes directly from Mindhunter, inside the FBI's elite serial crime unit, the book by former FBI profiler John Douglas. Rex Heuermann had studied the experts. He'd read books about serial killer profiling and used that knowledge to avoid the mistakes other killers made. He was learning from John Douglas how to evade people like John Douglas. The student studying the teacher, planning how to ace the final exam, except the exam was murder and the grade was freedom. But the planning document wasn't the only evidence found in Heuermann's home. When investigators examined his basement with forensic tools, they discovered something that corroborated every word in that document. Push pins in the drop ceiling, exactly where his document instructed to hang drop cloths from ceiling. Adhesive marks on the walls, from plastic sheeting, from tarps. When they used infrared light, a technology that reveals biological residue invisible to the naked eye, they found a cordoned-off area in the basement. A space where something terrible had happened. The district attorney Tierney explained that the physical layout of his basement matched the instructions in his planning document. The push pins, the space configuration, the ventilation modifications. He'd built a kill room in his own home. And here's the most disturbing part. He did this while his family lived upstairs. His wife, his children, sleeping above a chamber of horrors they never knew existed. Compartmentalization at this level requires extraordinary psychological control. He had to maintain two completely separate realities: family man upstairs, killer in the basement, without letting them bleed together. This is what criminologists call the mask of sanity, the ability to present as normal while concealing profound pathology underneath. But maintaining that mask requires constant effort, constant vigilance, and eventually the mask always slips. The charges mounted, first 3 murders, then 4, then 6, then 7. Investigators noticed something impossible to ignore. A pattern so precise it couldn't be coincidence. Every single time a woman vanished, Rex Heuermann's wife and children were out of town. When the cat's away, the mouse will play. Except in this case, when the family was away, the predator would hunt. Asa Ellerup would take their children to Iceland, her homeland, during summer months, sometimes for weeks at a time. Maureen Brainard-Barnes disappeared July 9, 2007. Heuermann's family, confirmed out of state. Melissa Barthelemy vanished July 10, 2009. Family, out of state. Megan Waterman, June 6, 2010. Family, out of state. Amber Costello, September 2, 2010. Family, out of state. Jessica Taylor, July 2003. Sandra Costello, November 1993. Valerie Mack, summer 2000. Every single time. This reveals something critical about his risk assessment. He would only kill when his family was away because, first, he needed uninterrupted time with victims in his home. Second, he needed to control the crime scene without witnesses. Third, he needed to dispose of bodies without explaining his absence. This level of planning shows extreme caution. He wasn't impulsive. He waited for the right conditions, sometimes months between opportunities. But prosecutors found something else, something that implicated the home environment itself. Hair evidence, not just Heuermann's DNA on the victims. Hair from his wife Asa, hair from his daughter. Transfer evidence, forensic scientists call it. Secondary DNA from Heuermann's home environment inadvertently carried on his clothes, his hands, his tools, his victims' bodies. Asa Ellerup's attorney, Robert Macedonio, in an interview commented that Asa has a very difficult time believing the husband she was married to for 29 years was capable of this. It's even more concerning, deeply disturbing, that her hair and her daughter's hair were found on some of these victims. Asa Ellerup filed for divorce shortly after her husband's arrest. She and their daughter, Victoria, would later appear in a Peacock documentary, still grappling with the impossible question. How do you reconcile the man you thought you knew with the monster prosecutors described? If you think this case deserves more attention, if you believe the victims' stories need to be told and their families deserve justice, please share this video. Send it to someone who follows true crime. Post it in communities that care about these issues. Every share amplifies the victims' voices. Every share keeps their stories alive. And every share helps us reach people who might have information about unsolved cases. This is how justice happens in the digital age, through collective attention, shared information, and communities that refuse to let these cases fade away. July 13, 2023. Rex Heuermann walked out of his Manhattan office at approximately 8:30 p.m. Fifth Avenue, busy with commuters, tourists, people heading to dinner, the ordinary chaos of New York City. He walked with that familiar lumbering gait, left hand in his pocket, a bag over his shoulder, just another architect ending another workday. He had no idea that dozens of eyes were watching him. And then, men in dark suits materialized around him like shadows becoming solid. Officers closed up on Rex Heuermann. "You're under arrest for the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello." For 12 years, he'd walked free. For 12 years, he'd believed he was untouchable. And in one moment, that illusion shattered like glass. At the time of his arrest, Heuermann was carrying a burner cell phone, the same one investigators had linked to his Thawk email account, the account used for searches about torture, about the investigation, about his victims. He was placed in an unmarked car. According to his attorney, Heuermann was in tears. According to defense attorney Michael Brown, Heuermann was emotional, confused. "He told me I didn't do this. I didn't do this." But investigators had something Rex Heuermann didn't know about. They had his own words, his own planning document, his own instructions for murder, preserved in the digital graveyard of his hard drive. And over the following months, more charges would come, each one backed by evidence that had been waiting in storage for years, sometimes decades. January 2024, charged with the murder of Maureen Brainard-Barnes. June 2024, charged with the murders of Jessica Taylor and Sandra Costello. December 2024, charged with the murder of Valerie Mack. 7 women, 7 murders spanning 31 years, from 1993 to 2010. At press conference, District Attorney Tierney announced publicly that this investigation is not over. We continue to execute search warrants. We continue to analyze evidence, and we anticipate additional charges may be forthcoming. Because remember, 10 sets of remains were found along Ocean Parkway. Heuermann is charged with 7. What about the others? In a Suffolk County courtroom, families gathered. Some for the first time in over a decade, they would see the face of the man accused of destroying their lives. Rex Heuermann sat emotionless. Sometimes he appeared to smirk. Sometimes he stared blankly ahead, showing no remorse. No recognition of the pain radiating from the families behind the prosecution table.
Like and subscribe.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Jessica Taylor's mother, too ill to attend, had her statement read by her attorney. "I miss how she called me mommy and mama. It's a tragedy she never had children. Jessica would have made a great mother." Maureen Brainard-Barnes' sister, Missy Can, spoke of living with a grief that never fades, only changes shape. In the words of Missy Can, "It's really, really hard. I miss her so much, every day, every single day. There's not a moment when I don't think about her, when I don't wonder what she'd be doing now, what her kids would be like if she'd got to see them grow up." Grief from homicide is different from other grief. It's called complicated grief or traumatic grief. There's no closure, no peaceful goodbye, just endless questions, endless what-ifs, endless rage at the injustice. And when the killer goes uncaught for years, for decades, that grief becomes a wound that can't heal. It festers. It defines lives. It becomes the thing families carry every single day. These women were daughters, sisters, mothers, friends, cousins, aunts. They were people with favorite songs and inside jokes, with dreams they never got to fulfill, with families who loved them and missed them and will never stop missing them. They deserve to be remembered not as victims in a serial killer's body count, but as the human beings they were, as the lights that were extinguished too soon. Rex Heuermann's defense team has mounted a vigorous challenge to every aspect of the prosecution's case. They've argued the DNA evidence, obtained through cutting-edge whole genome sequencing, has never been tested in a New York court, that the science, while promising, is too new to be considered reliable. They've argued that trying 7 murders together creates unfair prejudice, that the cumulative weight of evidence, the avalanche, as prosecutors call it, could lead a jury to convict based on volume rather than proof beyond reasonable doubt. They've pointed to gaps, no surveillance footage of the actual killings, no eyewitnesses to the murders themselves, no confession. According to defense attorney Michael Brown, one murder charge is obviously horrific and difficult to defend, and now we're at 7 separate accusations spanning 3 decades, but my client maintains his innocence, and he is entitled to a vigorous defense. This is the adversarial system at work. The defense isn't required to believe their client is innocent. They're required to ensure the prosecution proves guilt beyond reasonable doubt. Because if we convict people without demanding the highest standard of proof, we risk convicting the innocent along with the guilty. In September 2025, Judge Timothy Mazzei ruled against the defense on both major motions. The DNA evidence, advanced as it was, would be admissible. The science had been peer-reviewed, validated, used successfully in other jurisdictions. And all 7 murders would be tried together. The prosecution successfully argued they were inextricably interwoven. The same modus operandi, the same victim type, the same geographic area, the same planning document referencing the same dump sites. What we paraphrased from the ruling of the judge, Timothy Mazzei, stated that the evidence shows a clear pattern and methodology. These crimes are connected not by speculation, but by forensic reality. They should be tried together. As of January 2026, the trial is scheduled to begin after Labor Day 2026. Rex Heuermann remains in custody at the Riverhead Correctional Facility, held without bail. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges. But even as prosecutors prepare for what may be one of the most significant trials in Long Island history, questions linger like ghosts. 10 sets of remains were found along Ocean Parkway. Rex Heuermann is charged with 7 murders. What about the others? The toddler found alongside one of the victims, whose child was that? How did they die? The Asian male dressed in women's clothing, who was he? How did he end up there? The unidentified remain still waiting for names. Are there more victims, other dump sites, other families still waiting for answers? Investigators believe there may be. The planning document dated back to 2000. The earliest confirmed victim, Sandra Costello, died in 1993. How many years before that document was he planning? How many times before he wrote it down? Serial killers don't start with meticulous planning. They start with impulse, with opportunistic violence. They learn, they evolve. What came before the blueprint? And what of Shannan Gilbert, the woman whose disappearance sparked this entire investigation? Authorities maintain her death was accidental, that she ran into the marsh, disoriented by drugs and paranoia, and succumbed to the elements. But her family has never accepted that explanation. John Ray, attorney for Gilbert family, laments that the narrative the Suffolk County Police Department has spun is fraudulent. It's false. It's not consistent with the facts. Shannan was running for her life that night. She knew someone was trying to kill her. An independent autopsy commissioned by the Gilbert family concluded her injuries were consistent with homicidal strangulation. Was she Rex Heuermann's victim too? Authorities say no. The evidence doesn't connect them. But doubt remains. What do you think? Was Shannan Gilbert murdered, or was her death truly accidental? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss this as a community, respectfully, thoughtfully, with empathy for her family who's still seeking answers. And if you appreciate coverage that asks these hard questions while respecting the victims and their families, subscribe. We're building a community that cares about justice, about truth, about giving voice to the voiceless. So what can we learn from the Rex Heuermann case? What does it teach us about serial killers, about investigations, about the nature of evil itself? Lesson 1. Monsters don't look like monsters. We want serial killers to be obviously evil, to wear their pathology on their faces, to be identifiable at a glance. But Rex Heuermann was an architect, a husband, a father. He filed taxes. He had professional licenses. He attended family dinners. Evil doesn't announce itself with fanfare and ominous music. It commutes to work on the LIRR. It shops at Home Depot. It lives next door. The mask of sanity is real. High-functioning serial killers are often employed in stable jobs, married or in long-term relationships, involved in community activities, seemingly ordinary in every way. This is how they evade detection, not by being criminal masterminds, but by being forgettably normal. Lesson 2. Predators hunt where society doesn't watch. Every one of Heuermann's alleged victims was a sex worker. Everyone advertised online. Everyone existed in a space society has chosen to ignore. This isn't coincidence. This is strategic victim selection. Serial killer choose victims from marginalized populations because 1. Their disappearances are less likely to trigger immediate investigation. 2. They're less likely to have protective social networks. 3. Society's implicit bias means less public outcry. 4. Law enforcement historically deprioritizes these cases. This is called the missing white woman syndrome, inverted. When victims don't fit the media's ideal, their stories don't get told. But here's the thing we need to remember. These women mattered. Their lives had value. Their deaths deserve justice. The fact that society failed to protect them in life doesn't mean we should fail to honor them in death. Lesson 3. Technology that didn't exist when crimes were committed can still solve them. When Maureen Brainard-Barnes was murdered in 2007, whole genome sequencing didn't exist. When Sandra Costello was killed in 1993, cell tower data analysis was primitive. When the murders were happening, the digital forensics that would eventually catch the killer were science fiction. But evidence waits, patient, silent, and when technology catches up, the evidence speaks. This is why cold cases deserve continued investigation, why evidence must be preserved, why we should never assume a case is unsolvable just because current technology can't crack it. Tomorrow's science will solve today's mysteries. Lesson 4. Even meticulous killers make mistakes. Rex Heuermann created a planning document. He listed every problem, every supply, every precaution. And yet he got caught. Why? Because human behavior is inherently flawed. No matter how much you plan, you can't account for everything. Technology evolving beyond your predictions. Your own psychological compulsions overriding logic. The cumulative weight of evidence building over time. One small mistake like throwing away a pizza box, unraveling everything. Serial killers are often described as masterminds, but they're not. They're deeply disturbed individuals who temporarily outpace investigation. Eventually, they fail. Heuermann's own document warned him, "The more you do, the more clues you give." He knew the danger, and he killed anyway. Because serial killers aren't driven by logic, they're driven by compulsion, and compulsion always wins. Lesson 5. You can't live two lives forever. Heuermann maintained a family life upstairs and a murder operation in the basement. He went to work, came home, had dinner, tucked his children into bed. And then, when his family was away, he hunted. But living a double life is like juggling chainsaws. You can do it for a while, but eventually something slips. His digital searches reveal the cracks, obsessively monitoring the investigation, searching for his victims' families, unable to stop engaging with his crimes even when doing so created risk. This is the paradox of the serial killer psyche. They crave control, but they're controlled by their compulsions. So what does the Rex Heuermann case mean for the future of criminal justice? First, cold cases are not dead cases. Sandra Costello was murdered in 1993. 30 years passed before someone was charged. Valerie Mack remained Jane Doe 6 for 20 years before she was identified. Time doesn't erase evidence, it just makes us work harder to find it. Every cold case deserves periodic review. Every advance in technology should trigger re-examination of old evidence. Families waiting decades for answers aren't asking for the impossible. They're asking for persistence. Second, collaboration solves complex cases. The Suffolk County Task Force brought together local police, state investigators, FBI profilers, and prosecutors. Multiple agencies, multiple perspectives, multiple skill sets. This is how you catch someone who's evaded justice for decades. Third, all victims deserve equal investigation. For years, these cases were deprioritized. Women who worked as escorts were considered less dead, a term criminologists use for victims society deems less worthy of justice. This case proves that bias kills investigations. Every victim deserves the full weight of law enforcement resources, regardless of their profession, lifestyle, or circumstances. If you believe these lessons matter, if you think true crime should educate as well as engage, then this channel is for you. We don't just recap cases, we analyze them. We explore the psychology. We examine what went wrong and what went right. We honor victims by telling their complete stories. Subscribe now. Turn on all notifications, because cases like this, deeply researched, psychologically informed, ethically told, are exactly what we bring you every single week. And if you've made it this far in a feature-length investigation, you're exactly the kind of viewer who appreciates what we do. The trial, when it comes, will likely be one of the most significant in Long Island's history. Prosecutors will present what they've called an avalanche of evidence. DNA linking Heuermann to multiple victims. Cell tower data placing his phones at crime scenes. Digital searches revealing his obsession. The planning document in his own words. Physical evidence from his home matching his instructions. Witness testimony describing his vehicle and appearance. Financial records showing burner phone purchases. The district attorney, Tierney, asserts that we are thoroughly prepared. The evidence speaks for itself, and we believe justice will be served. The defense will challenge every piece, question every method, remind jurors that the burden of proof rests entirely with the prosecution. And somewhere in that courtroom will sit the families, Maureen's sister, Jessica's cousin, Sandra's loved ones who waited 3 decades, waiting to see if the man who allegedly stole their family members will finally face consequences. Today, if you drive along Ocean Parkway on Long Island, you'll see the same beaches where families still gather in summer. Children build sandcastles, couples walk hand in hand at sunset, life continues. But you'll also see something else. Small memorials, flowers left by strangers, ribbons tied to posts, remembrances for women whose names are now etched into the consciousness of this community. The beach remembers what we must not forget. Maureen, Melissa, Megan, Amber, Jessica, Valerie, Sandra. They were not invisible. They were not disposable. They were human beings whose lives mattered, whose deaths deserve justice, whose memories deserve honoring. People sometimes ask, why do we study these cases? Why dive into the darkness? Why give attention to evil? Because understanding how serial killers operate helps us stop them. Because examining investigative failures helps us fix broken systems. Because remembering victims prevents them from becoming statistics. Because justice delayed is still justice worth pursuing. And because the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to look away. We don't look away. The Gilgo Beach investigation reminds us of uncomfortable truths. That evil can wear an ordinary face. That monsters blend in, commute to work, live seemingly normal lives. That marginalized communities are more vulnerable precisely because society has deemed them less worthy of protection. That technology evolves faster than criminals anticipate. And that justice, when it finally comes, can never undo what was lost, but it can offer acknowledgement, validation, the recognition that these women mattered. Whether Rex Heuermann is convicted or acquitted, the truth has already emerged in ways he never anticipated. His planning document, designed to help him evade detection, became the very evidence that exposed him. His meticulous nature, the trait that made him a successful architect, created the paper trail that led investigators to his door. His belief in his own superiority, that he was smarter than the technology tracking him, became his downfall. As we await trial, as this case unfolds over the months ahead, we remember. We remember the 22-minute 911 call that started everything. We remember Officer Malia and his dog Blue, who found what they weren't looking for. We remember the task force that refused to let this case die. And most importantly, we remember the women. Not as the Gilgo Four, not as Jane Doe 6, not as statistics in a killer's tally, but as Maureen, who called her sister from Penn Station one last time, saying she'd be home soon. As Melissa, whose killer taunted her teenage sister on the phone, asking, "Do you know what I did?" As Megan, caught on grainy hotel surveillance footage, walking toward a man she thought was just another client. As Amber, whose roommate described her last client as looking like an ogre, and was tragically, horribly right. As Jessica, whose tattoo was mutilated to hide her identity, but whose family never stopped looking. As Valerie, who remained nameless for 20 years but was never forgotten. As Sandra, whose case gathered dust for 3 decades until someone finally listened. Their names are not forgotten. Their stories are not over. And the truth, after all these years of silence, is finally being told. Rex Heuermann remains in custody at Riverhead Correctional Facility. He is held without bail. His trial is scheduled to begin after Labor Day 2026. He has pleaded not guilty to all 7 counts of murder. If convicted, he faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. Authorities continue to investigate whether additional remains found along Ocean Parkway are connected to Heuermann. The Suffolk County Gilgo Beach Homicide Task Force remains active. Shannan Gilbert's death remains officially classified as accidental, though her family continues to dispute this determination. Before you go, I want to ask you for 3 things. First, if this investigation provided value, if you learned something, felt something, or gained new perspective on criminal psychology and justice, please hit that like button. It tells YouTube this content matters, and it helps us reach people who care about these stories. Second, subscribe and turn on all notifications. We release deep dive investigations like this every week, cases you haven't heard of, new developments in ongoing investigations, psychological analysis you won't find anywhere else. We're building a community of people who believe true crime should be more than entertainment. It should be educational, ethical, and victim-centered. Third, share this video. Post it on social media. Send it to someone who loves true crime, because these victims' stories deserve to be heard. Their families deserve to know people care. Every view, every share, every comment keeps their memories alive and puts pressure on law enforcement to solve other cold cases. Together, we're not just watching true crime. We're demanding justice. We're refusing to forget. We're making sure victims' voices aren't silenced. Thank you for seeking truth in a world full of sensationalism. I'll see you in the next investigation. Until then, remember, justice may be slow, but it's worth fighting for.